We welcome you to hour number 2 live right here on this Final Four Friday on the early line on Sports Grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. 2 more hours to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern. We continue to preview both of our matchups tomorrow night in the Final Four on a Saturday in San Antonio. We looked at the first game, of which DRS and myself will be live for on Sports Grid's Bracket Central coverage, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The All-SEC showdown between Florida and Auburn. We will start this second hour by looking at the nightcap, the final of 2 tomorrow night inside the Alamo Dome. The national championship favorites, that being the Duke Blue Devils, taking on the Houston Cougars. We'll have a Final Four Pick 6. We'll talk some of Final Four Friday at the Women's NCAA Tournament, and a special interview to end out this second hour as well, with an eye on the NFL Draft. Now fewer than 3 weeks remain until that opening round on a Thursday night in Green Bay, Wisconsin. DRS, plenty to get to here in this second hour.
No, there is. And also scheduling there for Saturday night's games. And, if you made me commissioner, we're not starting game number 1 at 6:09 and game number 2 at 8:49. It would be in the middle of the afternoon. The ratings would be exponentially higher. But again, the Ponzi scheme that is the NCAA, they got to hide money somewhere and ruin the ratings just so people don't get angry at how much money they make. Now, tomorrow, here's what I do like about the Final Four, Ben. 6:09 start, and then the second game, 8:49 start. 2.5 hours built in there, you should get a pretty good start time. Outside of overtime, that game's going to tip right at 8:49, just the way they suggested. So I do appreciate that. From working college basketball games, usually 2 hours, 2:05, 2:10, maybe at the most on a normal basketball game. You might have an extra commercial or 2 built in, but that's the good part. You're not going to be waiting till 9:22 in this game to get tipped off like you would in the NCAA tournament, where it's a little bit closer and compact. So at least we get that with estimated starting times that are probably going to be correct.
Yes, let's hope so, DRS. It will be a fun-filled Saturday night. There is no doubt. That nightcap scheduled to tip around 8:49 p.m. Eastern time, live from San Antonio. It is Duke and Houston, the national championship favorites in the Blue Devils, who have been the national title favorites all season long. A 5.5-point favorite against Houston, and a total at 136.5. DRS, 5.5-point spread in favor of Duke. Just how competitive do you think our second of 2 on a Final Four Saturday in San Antonio is going to be?
Really competitive, I do. And I do think Duke is the best overall team in the tournament, but this is a matchup there that's not like, okay, who's Duke going to play in the national championship game? This is one of those where you're not going to be surprised right off the bat. Houston takes a 15-5 lead. I'm being honest, because this is a scrappy team. The one thing that Duke can do better than anybody else, which you can't teach, Ben, it's length on the court, it's size on the court. Duke has that. And the one thing Houston doesn't have in spades is size on the court. But they may get up for it in so many other ways. But the tough part about it is, what does Duke not do well on defense? Number one, an effective field goal percentage, which means they don't foul you. They defend the three-point line. 43.3% inside the arc. Why? Because you got to go over twin towers down low just to try to make a layup, and you better have that short-range jumper working. Having said that, Houston doesn't rely on, we need to make three-point shots to win this basketball game. We do everything multifaceted, but Duke is the better team. But this is one of those games where I don't look at game number 1 for myself. You know me, I already like Florida. It's unquestionable. I'm going to bet that tomorrow. I'm still undecided on this game because you give me, depending on where this line ends up, let's just say it gets to 6 tomorrow. Love Houston with the 6, Ben. We're not getting unlimited possessions on both sides for a team in its home state, in an aircraft, or playing on an aircraft carrier in that dome down there. Look, I got to tell you, I'm feeling Houston a bit. I am.
And DRS, unlike our first game of the night, we brought this up, right? If you're backing Florida, you're probably laying 2.5 points, because unless it is decided by just a single possession and an otherworldly thriller, which it could be tomorrow night in San Antonio to start, more than likely the team that wins the game is going to cover. That could be Auburn outright as the dog, or Florida as an ever so slight favorite. I do think there is a chance that the team that wins outright in Duke does not cover as a 5.5-point favorite tomorrow against Houston. That is the type of game we could see. That is what the odds makers expect with that total of 136.5. In DRS, one of the reasons that total is the way it is, not just because Houston is the most efficient defense in college basketball, not just because on the other side, Duke is talented at every single level on the defensive end of the floor, but of course based on the pace. Houston does not want to play fast. In fact, they were the 5th slowest team in college hoops, which works perfectly into what Duke wants you to do on the defensive end. Entering the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, Duke's opposition, average possession length on the offensive side of the floor, 19.6 seconds. How long do the Cougars normally take to set up their offense? 19.6 seconds. I think that advantage actually slightly favors Duke because it plays into their hand. That is the reason, DRS, this total is 136.5. So let me ask you, let's correlate that side and that over-under. If Houston stays within this number and covers as a 5.5-point underdog, what does that mean for our total of 136 and a hook?
I still like the under regardless of either team wins here. I know there usually is a correlation at this point. We've seen Houston play some higher scoring games in the tournament here, but also understand the stakes and the magnitude here. Neutral court, Final Four, all the press all week long. You haven't played all week. Maybe come out a little bit rusty. Maybe it's a little bit of nerves. Because understand this, like these kids are already used to playing in big-time environments. Like all their life, they've been the superstar on the court, and everybody expects them to perform. But now you just take it up a level into the Final Four. And also, sometimes, Ben, it's stealing free points out here. And just take a look at Houston's offense. We told you that Duke doesn't foul. Well, Houston doesn't rely on the free throw line, which means then you're saying, well, Duke is ultra efficient on defense. You're not stealing points at the free three-point line, and you're not shooting a ton of three-point shots made. That makes it tougher to score. So even though Houston didn't wind up as one of the best teams in the country by happenstance, like, oh, we just play good defense and let it ride. Well, no, that's St. John's out here that'll fall apart on offense at any given time. Houston's offense is unbelievable. Top 10 in efficiency in the country. We're not talking about St. John's bricking three-point shot after three-point shot. But when you're looking to get easy buckets, as you pointed out, Ben, how do you usually beat a good team? Get out and run. If they're extremely tall, it means they might not be able to get down the court. But if Houston isn't just going to change its stripes in the national championship, Final Four national championship game, they're going to play to what they know, which means we don't want to speed you up. Let's play to our level, which does favor Duke in a way at that point because it's going to make it even harder to score if you're not stealing easy buckets with 3-on-2 or 2-on-1 matchups as you head down court.
And this total opened at 134.5. It is slightly up, but still a rather minimal number for a college basketball game. Again, 70% of the money on the spread back in the Blue Devils, laying 5.5 points. In fact, both of the favorites have a lot of money on them. Same with Florida in the opening matchup against Auburn. I guess in a tournament defined by its chalk and not so much its chaos, it would make sense to back the teams the odds makers expect to at least win outright. DRS, I think one of the biggest difference for the Cougs this year as compared to the last 5 years in which Houston also at least reached the Sweet 16 is this Houston team is a much better three-point shooting team than we had seen in the past half-decade for Kelvin Sampson's club. The previous 5 years, never inside the top 100 in college basketball. This year, the best three-point shooting team in the nation entering last weekend, still second best, slightly based on a percentage, dropping from 39.8% to 39.7%. The three-point shot is the great equalizer. And the Cougs don't need to take 45 like Alabama. They just need to be efficient against a Duke team that makes it very difficult defensively to find efficient or non-contested looks against them. That is one of the keys for this Houston team that last year, DRS, played Duke in the Sweet 16, was booked as an ever so slight favorite, even without Jamal Shedd or Terrence Arsenault or Joseph Tugler, those final two guys on this year's Houston team, and did falter in a game 54-51.
Yeah, and it also can be the great equalizer because, as we said, Football Dome Stadium, 2 games under their belt. Football Dome Stadium on deck. Cryer, 41%. You also take a look there. Sharp, 41%, and also close to 45% for UConn. They shoot it, man. They shoot it.
Plenty more breakdowns for this game next. Let's dive even deeper into our nightcap on a Final Four Saturday in San Antonio. Duke and Houston. We have talked about the total. It is slightly up. 136.5 on this Friday morning, but still a rather minimal number for a college basketball contest. DRS, as you said, you're expecting 2 unders tomorrow night in the opening game between Auburn and Florida, and in this second game, regardless of the result. Both defenses incredibly sound. Houston, the most efficient defense in college basketball. Duke does not make anything easy on that end of the floor. Houston, the best three-point shooting team in college hoops, entering the second weekend of the Big Dance. Where they are lacking ever so slightly is that post presence. Now, Jawan Roberts is their dog, but he's not necessarily all that tall. Come on, Maluwatch, one of the great rim defenders, the freshman for Duke, and Cooper Flagg can get it done on the defensive end of the floor as well.
Yes, and also you're taking a look at some of these players coming into the Final Four the first time they're getting a look at this big stage here in that big arena, 85 to 90,000, which does sort of harm me if, maybe the second half or even the championship game. It's like, okay, we won our game here. Sight lines are fine. Extra practice on Sunday. Shoot around again on Monday morning. We've been here a few days. Everything is going to be fine. Now, understand this. They don't just show up to the arena on a Saturday afternoon like, hey, it's the first look at it here. Oh, my goodness, we're playing in an hour and a half. They've been there all week long practicing and getting the flow down, which is going to help them. But again, when the bright lights come on, it's a little bit different with the atmosphere around them. So for myself, when I take a look at player props, again, not necessarily looking towards Cooper Flagg, who I think is going to have a very good performance, but these are still, again, elite defenses. You're not just going to get easy trips to the free throw line and easy dunks and three-point shots as it goes. However, we know Houston defends the three-point shot. They do. But Houston allows the three-point shot. So if you're collapsing and condensed down low and Cooper Flagg trying to get to the rim, I always find myself going to the guys that are known to knock down three-point shots. And Tyrese Proctor, one of the best in the country. His points prop, though, is listed at 12.5. So it's that thought process. Why don't you just take 3 or 4 three-point shots, because that's really his game at this point. But again, don't make it hard on yourself. If I tell you Houston is great on defense but will let you shoot the three-point shot, I'm not looking at a guy that's going to make most of his money from 15 feet in and banging down in the paint here. I want these guys at the three-point line. So Proctor, for me, is probably going to be one of those guys that I'm looking forward to, along with maybe a Con Knipple, to knock down the open three-point shot, because that's the shot that's going to be available versus Houston.
Yeah, DRS, it's such a great point as well. It is one of the reasons when you play these efficient defenses and you see the numbers. Ooh, Houston will allow you to take the three if you want it. Sure, but it's not so much if you want it offensively. It might be your last resort because you can't get any other good look, so you end up taking a contested three near the end of the shot clock. But it is a way that Duke can take advantage. Tyrese Proctor, 6 made threes in the round of 64 against Mount St. Mary's. 7 of 8 from 3 against Baylor in the round of 32. 13 total made triples in the opening weekend. Only 3 in the 2 games in the second weekend in Newark, New Jersey. We'll talk about Con Knipple in just a second. Also, one of the reasons that these points props might seem a little bit limited is because you have 2 elite defenses and a total of 136.5. But DRS, there is no doubt. When you start to break down a Duke basketball game, your focus goes to one spot above all else. That is Cooper Flagg, 18.5 points. His prop for the Final Four matchup against Houston on Saturday night.
Oh, it certainly does. And he does it all. It's not like, hey, he doesn't shoot three-point shots. He does everything well. He gets to the free throw line, converts at a high percentage, can shoot the three-point shot. He's going to be the focal point of that offense. It's just a matter of the fact of how you want to play this game. Because we talked about game number 1, Ben, around 160. This game is around 135. So you're not going to get as many opportunities with 2 really good defenses. Again, it's just me sometimes where I say, do I want the highest tax bracket on the court, which would be Cooper Flagg, Janai Broome, Walter Clayton Jr., and again, LJ Cryer. I just look for secondary options in these big games, which would be so big. Just again, from that philosophy of you're coming into the game as a very good defense. You have to shut down the secondary players. Because trust me on this, you're not just going to get all 4 number 1 players from each one of these teams being the lead dog scorers. You are going to get surprises, which is what always happens in a non-7 game series. You're like, wow, Knipple had 25 points here. Yeah, because they had a double team each and every time you threw the ball into the lower block to Cooper Flagg, and he was wide open for shots that Houston was willing to take. Because I told you, they'll allow those 3-point shots. For me, he should have a good game. He always has a good game. But in a lower scoring game, you're expecting him to get 20. As you pointed out, hey, 17, 9, and 6. It's a damn good game against Houston in a victory for Duke, but that doesn't cash you a ticket if you look at the prop bets. So for me, I'm probably going to stay away from the number 1s on each one of these number 1s.
Yeah, you're paying a premium, no doubt, on Cooper Flagg. The entire prop profile, if you will, 18.5 points for Flagg, 7.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Both the rebounding and assist number has over juice on the over, I should say. Cooper Flagg has only gone over 18.5
Yeah.
once so far in the
Out of bounds.
NCAA tournament, the 30-point brilliant performance against Arizona. Con Knipple scored at least 20 in both of the games at the Rock in Newark in that second weekend of the NCAA tournament. 14.5 points is his prop. DRS, there are so many different guys that can get it done for Kelvin Sampson's Cougs. A lot of guys who have been in this program for a very long time. A lot of guys that saw their NCAA tournament run come to a close in the Sweet 16 last year against Duke. That includes L.J. Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, Jawan Roberts. But Joseph Tugler, Terrence Arsenault, and Milos Uzon did not play Duke last year. Tugler and Arsenault injured in that game. Uzon was playing for Oklahoma. His points prop 12.5. If you had to pick a guy for Houston, who might it be?
Yeah, it's Uzon. It really is, because the ability to shoot the three-point shot, make it with accuracy and volume. Because sometimes you say, hey, look, what do they do each game? Well, he shoots maybe two here, two here. As of late in the tournament, you saw the two, but the game before that, 6 of 9. I need the guy with the ability when he's making the three-point shot that goes, you know what? I'm not fine with 2 for 3. Let me ramp this up. That's probably my guy I'm looking for at that point, because I love the three-point shot. And I might be contradicting myself with that. He loved the three-point shot. You just told me they're playing in a huge arena at this point. Understand this again. Houston already had 2 looks in 2 games and multiple practices in a dome opportunity. Now coming back home to Houston in another dome, I think there's a slight advantage for Houston, maybe from the three-point line. As you pointed out, Ben, they're elite from the three-point line when they shoot it.
Milos Uzon, 2+ made threes, minus 120. You're not paying a huge premium just to get 2 made triples tomorrow night against Duke. A pick 6 for a Final Four weekend next. A pick 6 for Final Four weekend in San Antonio and in Tampa, Florida, where the women's NCAA tournament resides for their Final Four Friday. That starts tonight as well. All chalk, all weekend long. Sure, there is a 2 seed in the women's big dance in Connecticut, but Gino Auriemma, Paige Beckers, AZ Fudd, they were expected to win their region. They have been the national championship favorites since the bracket was revealed for their field of 68. DRS, we start, though, by looking at the men's side. A Final Four weekend in San Antonio. And we start big picture. Come Monday night, who climbs the ladder to cut down the nets as a national champ?
It's the Duke Blue Devils. They've been the best team all year long. And you know what? I actually have a little bit different of an opinion here on Duke. If, let's just say, Cooper Flagg played all the way through the ACC tournament and into the tournament itself in March Madness. He said, well, why would you say that, Donnie? Because I actually think they got better when he actually went down. It was like, you know what? We're not just a one-man show where we just crumble because we just look at Cooper Flagg like, hey, do something with the basketball. We'll all watch. Like, he goes down, which could have devastated any team. Like, we don't even know if he's coming back for the tournament, let alone to win that game that he got injured, then knock out UNC, who thought that they weren't getting into the tournament unless they beat Duke, and they handled them, and then won the ACC championship game, then came in the tournament with question marks how healthy Flagg would be, and it turns out he's completely healthy, and they look absolutely sensational. So I'm going to stick it out with Duke. Do I want to bet them? Will I bet them right now at this price? No, I won't. But I can't just say, you know what? I don't think they're the best, and if they're the best, they got to win it.
Yeah, and Donnie, it's really hard to fault that kind of notion. Duke now enters this weekend a slight minus money favorite to win a national championship at minus 115. Again, before the year got started, a plus 950 price on the Blue Devils to win a national championship. The freshman talent expected has delivered. Cooper Flagg, Con Knipple, Kaman Maluach in that starting 5, but also guys like Isaiah Evans and Patrick Gunba off the bench, mended with some of that veteran experience in Tyrese Proctor and a couple of transfers in Sion James and Mason Gillis, who will play in his second consecutive Final Four, was there last year with Purdue. Also keep an eye, DRS, Malik Brown could be back into the fold in a big way this weekend in the Final Four. He was also injured in that opening half of the ACC tournament quarterfinal against Georgia Tech. That could provide even more front court depth and balance for the Duke Blue Devils. My pick to start the NCAA tournament is still going to be my pick to win a national championship entering Final Four weekend. That is Florida. I've believed in the Gators as maybe the most dangerous team in the final 2 months of the college basketball season. I still think Florida is incredibly dangerous. A favorite to beat Auburn. I expect them to do that. And then I think they can give more than likely Duke a challenge in that national championship game on Monday. Again, the Blue Devils would be about a 4.5-point favorite, and that projected and hypothetical spread, I think it would be an instant classic on Monday night in San Antonio. So, Donnie, you go with Duke. I go with Florida. That will be my national championship game. Do you agree, by the way, that Florida will be playing Duke in that national title game on Monday?
Yeah, by the way, funny story, like here at the Sports Grid Network in our pool, Joe Friese, the producer, has me iced out with the Duke Blue Devils and the Florida Gators in the championship game, so I can't win that. But I'll tell you one funny thing that I did, which, again, sometimes I don't pay attention. I have another pool that I'm right in the mix for, and I checked yesterday, Ben, and I have Florida winning that championship, which I didn't pick, which means I just messed up and went through it really quickly and pushed Florida instead of Duke, but that actually could, which so now technically I am rooting for the Florida Gators in another pool now because I have a chance to win that, where in the Sports Grid one, I don't because I have the Duke Blue Devils because I fat-fingered it. So go figure. But yes, all along I thought these two teams were going to get into the final and give us an epic final performance.
Joe Friese, correct me if I am mistaken. If Florida beats Duke, do I win the Sports Grid bracket? Or we're going to check on that just to confirm. I do believe I guarantee.
Let's wait, not talk till he gets back to us.
Yeah, okay. Ooh, that might be copyrighted, so we'll just wait on that. DRS, I do think that guarantees me at least top two. Yeah. Is Sports Grid doing a payout for the top two? We shall see. Florida needs to beat Houston for me to win.
Yeah, by the way, let me ask you a question. Is like, we can't talk about monetary figures because we play for fun here at the network, right? We don't play for any money. It's bragging rights all across. But is there bragging rights for the number two person or just the number one person?
Hold on a second. Why can't we talk about that? There's nobody under the age of 18 in the Sports Grid pool, is there?
Oh, yes, there is. Oh, yeah, there is.
Oh, my God. Please. Oh, DRS's kid is there. Excuse me. By the way, delete that. Yep. I didn't say anything about money. It's for pride, only at the Sports Grid Network. Our Pick Six continues next. For the pride of Final Four weekend, we continue here on this early line on a Final Four Friday. Our Pick Six for what we will see this weekend in San Antonio. A doubleheader of Final Four matchups on Saturday night, a national championship game on Monday evening. DRS, you like Duke to win a national championship. I like Florida. I think we both expect that to be the national championship matchup. The Blue Devils taking on the Gators. If I like Florida to win a national championship, then my MOP is Walter Clayton Jr., just as it was before the big dance got underway. If you like the Blue Devils to win the NCAA tournament, there you see Walter Clayton Jr., by the way, a 4-1 number to win MOP. Florida's price is plus 310. I would not advise betting that, by the way. I just think that is the most likely outcome. I'll just take Florida at plus 310. I don't need 90 more cents of value so I can hone in on one individual, although a correlated thought nonetheless. Donnie, I assume the correlated thought continues for you as well if the Blue Devils are your national championship pick.
Same thing. I just spent hour number one saying there's no value on Cooper Flagg, but it is just a direct correlation where if I do think the Duke Blue Devils win, he's probably the best player. But at that price point, I won't be taking that. I'll be going down for a Tyrese Proctor, a Con Knipple, somebody that might be able to light it up from the three-point line. But it would be dumb for me to be like, hey, let me take Duke as the champion and then Walter Clayton to win the MOP at this point. See what I mean? Best player on the best team is usually what happens here. But just at that price point at plus 105, I won't be betting it personally, even though let's just say a 75% chance he wins that award. If Duke does cut down the nets, he's probably going to get it. But at 105, I won't be placing that wager personally myself.
Yeah, again, I don't think there is value on Cooper Flagg. I don't even think there's value on Walter Clayton Jr. Yeah. If you want to make the argument for best player on the team that ends up winning the title, having some value, maybe. Janai Broome at plus 850, $3 behind Auburn's price, the fourth and longest number of the Final Four to win a national championship at plus 550. But if we want to talk actual value, like a big plus money hit for something that could be a little bit random come Final Four weekend, again, MOP, only these two games in San Antonio, not the entirety of the NCAA tournament. I do believe it is the secondary options. All right, DRS, a Final Four best bet. Where do you go for our two matchups tomorrow night inside the Alamo Dome?
Yeah, take a look at the Final Four best bet. Again, it's simple for me. I liked it all week. I'm not going to back out of it here. It's the Florida Gators at a minus 2.5 point price frame. Now, have I bet it yet? No. Am I hoping that it goes to 2? Maybe a little bit. But even if it goes to 3 or 3.5, I still like Florida to win this basketball game. It was a no-brainer. Do I think both of these games are going to be tremendous? And even once we get to the final, yes, we might be able to reevaluate some numbers. But just for tomorrow's Final Four games, the number that sticks out more than any total or any side, it's certainly going to be the Florida Gators at a minus 2.5 to advance, beat Auburn, and make it to the final, who I do think is going to be the Duke Blue Devils. But for me, I'm really confident in the Gators tomorrow.
Yeah, DRS, it feels like a really good number, a 2.5 point spread in favor of Florida. The Gators entered the NCAA tournament as the best high major cover team in college basketball, 26-8 against the spread. They've only covered once in the Big Dance. It was that Sweet 16 rout of Maryland in the second half, despite only being up by a single bucket at the break. Florida has been a great cover team. We'll see if they do that here against the Tigers. DRS, I also agree, of course, that Florida, as my national champion, will be in that national championship game. And one of the reasons I had confidence in the Gators entering the Big Dance, not just Walter Clayton Jr., not just the exceptional guard play of Will Richard or Elijah Martin off the bench for Todd Golden, but the 6'11 Aussie that can do it all in Alex Condon. He hasn't so far in the NCAA tournament. The only game he has scored in double figures, the opener against Norfolk State, when he scored 12 points. He was also injured in the opening half against Maryland, an ankle injury that he was trying to work through to return in the second half. He did have had a couple of big defensive stops against the Terrapins to seal that game late. I'm not sure how healthy he was against Texas Tech. I know how healthy he needs to be if they are going to edge out Auburn tomorrow night in the Final Four. My Final Four best bet, and I am excited to actually bet this when I reach New Jersey tomorrow, Alex Condon over 10.5 points.
Yeah, and also, just as long as he's healthy, he should be just fine with that. It's an interesting always bet on Condon because he does have some games where he gets into the 20s, but other games, which one of them I bet took like one shot from the field. He's that guy that has the opportunities early, the dunks, the putbacks, the alley-oops there, the cheap points here, and he does get to the free throw line. He just has to make his fair share of those free throw shots. But it's never a bad bet on Condon any one time he's around 10 points because the one thing you know you'll get, Ben, his worst-case scenario, probably going to give you 6, which means there's always a chance for that game that he can get to the 10 points. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. Just give me a chance to be in the ballpark.
DRS, there's going to be a lot of three-point props I'm invested in that opening game tomorrow. Just to make one, Thomas Houck at minus 154.
Yes.
Slightly a hefty number, but if I can get one made 3, I'll pay minus 154 to Hod Pettiford on the other side for Auburn, who has made at least 2 triples in all 4 games for the Tigers in the Big Dance. It's minus 126 to hit 2 threes tomorrow night. All right, a special for Final Four weekend, a combination of bets, a couple of things that we can see there. DRS, what is your special for Final Four weekend in the NCAA tournament?
Kept it simple. If I'm looking for unders, we'll start with that first game, which does have a high total. And if you are expecting a lot of points here, hey, look, 70-plus points is doable. 75 is fine. Even take a look at going to around 80 points in this. How about this bet? Both teams, Auburn and Florida, to neither one of them, Ben, to score 85 or more points in the game tomorrow. I went with the under on that one in that wager. It's a minus 104 price. Could they get there? Absolutely. But I would not be surprised that we're staring at halftime 32-29, and away we go into the second half, which you would need a lot, which means maybe overtime or a crazy final 2 minutes where they put up 25 combined points to knock that down. And also, if we do end up with a 40-30 game at the break, which is a decently high-scoring game, technically you're still on pace for the under for both teams at 85 points. I just thought it was a good number. If I'm leaning towards the under, why not put a focus on this game here where one of these two teams probably going to enter into the 80s? Just keep it below 85 points. That's where I went at low juice.
DRS, I like that look. And again, a storyline will be at least early. Sightlines for these two teams in a big, big arena that is the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. You mentioned Houston last week playing inside Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. The Cougs basically had to play a road game in the Sweet 16 against Purdue in Indy, but played in a football stadium. The sightlines could be different from Indianapolis to San Antonio, but at least the Cougars get to return home to the Lone Star State. Not exactly San Antonio and Houston all that close, but still, at least they are back in the state of Texas. My Final Four special, Con Knippel to score the most points of the weekend. One aspect of looking at this DRS is needing Duke to play in both games. I think they get to the national championship. And although Cooper Flagg could still win most outstanding player, even if he is not Duke's leading scorer this weekend in San Antonio, Con Knippel has been sensational. At least 20 in both games in the East Regional out in Newark. 20 against Arizona. Leading scorer, scoring 21 points against Alabama. And you have mentioned it. If the Cougs make things difficult for Cooper Flagg, who is that secondary option? Con Knippel, literally Robin to Flagg's Batman, and he has thrived in that role all year long.
No, he certainly has, and that's always a good part to look at, those secondary options. Put it this way, of all those 4 seeds here, there's going to be a secondary option that's going to get at least 20-plus points in his game here in the Final Four, and that's what I'm looking forward to. You just have to focus on who's going to get the opportunities and who's going to get the chances to do that. And all we ask for this weekend, look me right in the face, referees. Don't you dare try to steal the attention in this Final Four game by calling 2 fouls on Cooper Flagg, Knippel, or Uzan, whoever it is. Leave those guys alone. You want to call the first foul on them, say, you know what, you can't be doing that. Just don't have us robbed of great performances by great players because of ticky-tack fouls. That's all I'm asking for.
Allow them to play with physicality, because we know all 4 teams are really stout on the defensive end of the floor, especially in the nightcap tomorrow in San Antonio between Duke and Houston. We round out our pick 6 by looking at Final Four Friday. In the women's NCAA tournament, who's cutting down the nets on Sunday? Who's that most outstanding player? Find out next. We welcome you back to a Final Four Friday live right here on the early line on Sports Grid. Final Four Saturday, tomorrow night, of course, in San Antonio in the men's NCAA tournament. All 4 1 seeds have reached the Final Four. Final Four Friday in the women's NCAA tournament. 3 1 seeds and a 2 seed, but still all chalk. Every team that was favored to win their portion of the bracket did, in fact, do that. And that 2 seed is only a 2 seed in number, not in name, not in performance, not in expectation. Because the Connecticut Huskies, that 2 seed led by Paige Beckers, AZ Fudd, and Sarah Strong, and coached by Gino Auriemma, are the national championship favorites, as they have been all Big Dance long. There are the numbers. UConn, A- money favorite at -155. South Carolina hoping for their 2nd consecutive national crown, their 3rd in the last 4 seasons, +250. UCLA, the number 1 overall seed, +750, in Texas at a +850 price, the 4th and longest number. Final Four matchups are this. UConn and UCLA in the nightcap. The Huskies are a 7.5-point favorite. Much like in the men's Final Four, an all-SEC affair in the opening game of Final Four Friday in Tampa, South Carolina, 4.5-point favorite against Texas. So DRS, as we continue our pick 6 entering this Final Four weekend, who do you think wins a national championship in women's college basketball?
I went long shot, Texas Longhorns here. Give me the +850 price. But by the way, like, you know me, I like to be commissioner. If we're looking to improve the women's game and like up the tickets, the men's tournament won't be happy with this, nor the fans. Why aren't we playing on a Friday night in San Antonio, then a Saturday, then a Sunday, then a Monday, and having a giant weekend? Now, here's what the NCAA would do, which would upset people. In order to buy tickets for the men's tournament, you must also purchase tickets for the women's tournament in a 90,000-seat arena. So the NCAA does like to leave money on the table, Ben. I believe if they move it to the same arena and force people to buy tickets, it's more money in the pot for everybody. Why aren't we having one extravaganza in the same city all week long for championships?
Well, I think it's great for both events to have their own unique destinations. You have 2 economies that thrive because of it, and it's a marquee event for both sides, right? There is that comparison naturally, but you have 2 marquee events where the scheduling logistics do not become complicated in the same city. Donnie, I would think that the women's Final Four in the women's national championship game is your exact favorite event. We start tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern between Texas and South Carolina. And then on Sunday, national championship game, middle of the day in the afternoon when everybody is home, enjoying it around 3 p.m. Eastern time.
And by the way, you bring up great points here. So you start to sway me over to the women's game. Let's just understand this. Men's Final Four on a Friday night, epic ratings. A Sunday 3 o'clock tip for the men's national championship game would absolutely break records here. But again, as I say, Ben, there is a reason why they don't do it, is because they need to hide some of that money and not show the people like we make all this, because that's the only thing I can think of. I can't imagine. And again, anytime, put it anytime on Sunday before 5 o'clock, the ratings would, to me, Ben, double for that game. That's Monday night after 9 o'clock. I don't have any idea why we don't do this. I really don't.
There is the allure of the prime time window, but I think on Sunday, especially in the afternoon, that's when everybody's kind of recuperating from the weekend, getting ready for the week ahead. They're at home. They're on their couch. They're trying to take in sports.
Yes.
I do agree. DRS, Texas, a 4.5-point dog tonight against South Carolina in Tampa. Of course, it was the Longhorns that ended the Gamecocks' 57-game SEC win streak when these two teams met in early February in Austin. They have already played 3 times this year. South Carolina victorious in 2 of the 3. In Columbia and by nearly 20 in the SEC tournament title game just a couple of weeks ago. But I expect this game to be close. And the Gamecocks struggled in the second weekend. They were tested by Duke. They were tested by Maryland, trailing in both of those fourth quarters late in regulation. DRS, my national championship pick, is where it has been all year long. UCLA, plus 550 price way back in January when the Bruins were the only unbeaten team in college basketball, led by National Coach of the Year, and rightfully so, in Corey Close. I thought the number would be better if they could see this stage. Sadly, it is $2 even longer because they take on UConn. 7.5-point spread. I think Lauren Betts and the Bruins keep this game within the number. I know UConn has been dominant. They have won 14 consecutive games by at least 14 points. I still think UCLA keeps it close tonight.
By the way, you talk about these people like to get into the podcast game later on in life. Anytime a person named Lauren Betts wants to get into our community here, I mean, what a great DRS, Donnie Rightside, Lauren Betts. That shows like a great show down there, man. That is a great name for getting into that, business after you retire from basketball. I love it. I love it.
We'll see if Lauren Betts wants to get into media or in the world of sports betting.
What a great
I think
name.
we're breaking a lot of rules and regulations today, talking about collegiate athletes and sports wagering. But hey, we'll wait for that a different time. Lauren Betts, one of the best bigs in college basketball. She will be key tonight for UCLA, because when you have to defend Paige Beckers on the other side, who has been on an absolute heater, it is very difficult to do. It is why Paige Beckers, DRS, and unsurprisingly so, for a Connecticut team that's a minus 155 favorite to cut down the nets, is a minus 150 favorite to win the most outstanding player of the women's Final Four. If UConn wins, Paige Beckers is winning it based on narrative and narrative alone, but the performances have been unreal. At least 22 points in the last 3 games for UConn. But if you think Texas wins, and I think UCLA gets the job done, then who are our MOPs for the women's Final Four?
Madison Badlands Booker plus 900 BSS, handling her business in the Final Four tonight and in the final on Sunday at a 9-1 price. You can't pass that up. The best player on the Texans women's team, Madison Booker. She's going to cut down the nets and get that MOP.
I've told you about Lauren Betts. Now, there's a lot to like about UCLA, one of their veteran leaders in Kiki Rice as well, who is probably going to have to defend Paige Beckers come tonight. But I go with Lauren Betts at a 12-1 number and some value there for a plus 750 price for the UCLA Bruins. Live right here on the early line, we welcome you to hour number 3 on this Friday to end out our 3 hours to round out this week up until 11 a.m. Eastern. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. A big shout out, by the way, once again to Marcus Harper II joining us here on the early line. We wish him the best of luck in his NFL draft process and his future in the National Football League. DRS in this third and final hour will continue to set the stage for the Final Four, both tonight in the women's NCAA tournament and, of course, our doubleheader of action from San Antonio on a Saturday evening as well. Our coach, James Young, JY, will join us here in the final half an hour to round out this week. But outside of college hoops, we'll also set the stage for this Friday in Major League Baseball. A huge series gets started this weekend in Philadelphia and a little bit of NBA talk as well, handicapping some of the best games on this Friday night slate around the association. Still so much to get to in this final hour on TEL.
You know me, like I'm big into like the topics that make some sense. Like we just talked to Marcus Harper there. I want to know about. I don't care. Sometimes not the playing career. I want to know about the swag. I want to know about how we're looking, how clean we can be. And he was very forthcoming with that answer. You know what I do think is interesting? Your boy DRS is a junior. Like he's the second. Like, is there a reason behind where you can be the second or a junior, or is it just like what's the difference between that?
Wow, a great question.
Yeah,
is a junior the second?
Yeah,
because
like
you
my
go
father's
junior
the same name
third,
as me,
right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Like is
but
there
it's
a choice
it's
now
not
you can
like
make between
junior,
two and junior?
second, third.
No.
Right?
No, like I just think it might be like a way that you can just use that because I always thought like the swag on the uniform, like my last name's Seymour, like Seymour Jr., like Deion Sanders, like Sanders Jr. on the back. Always thought that was pretty cool. And then now you have the twos back there, like that's extra swag
Two
that
looks
you can
sick.
use that not everybody can use.
Yeah,
I like it.
Have you ever considered going as Donnie right side the second?
No, like I all throughout my playing career, like we never had the option like put like junior on the uniform, which I would have done because again that's extra swag. But I just always find it interesting between juniors and second why you would actually go that route. Like the third, that's a great one. Like your automatically nickname is Trey, right? Like hey, it's the third, it's Trey over there. It's great, man. You get the extra swag on the naming rights. Fantastic stuff.
Imagine though, by the way, we have a logo. If you did ever go by Donnie right side the second. DRS, but the S is a 2, so it's DRS2.
It's true.
But it looks pretty cool.
Like,
now we're talking about it.
Like
All
even
right, again,
the
producer
fourth,
extraordinaire.
tremendous. Yeah, like that'd be
tremendous.
crazier.
The IV, that's sick.
Yeah.
All right, so here again, our producer extraordinaire, Joe Frizo, giving us all the information that we need. The difference between junior and second is that junior JR is to be used when the child is going to have the same name as his father, whereas the second should be used when the child would be taking the name of a family member other than his father.
Wow. That's interesting.
Wow.
Now that's interesting. Now you want to get into another fight around the DRS household at this point. I mean, I have one kid by design, it's a girl. But again, I've told this story before. The wife not going to let me name my child after me if it was a boy. Like, now it never came to blows because, again, we had a girl at that point. Like, come on now. Like, that would have been the ultimate sign of disrespect. That's like saying, hey, you know what? The wife's not going to take your last name and or wear a wedding ring at that point. Like, I have that right up there with the disrespectfulness. Now, again, it never got to, real anger because of we had a daughter again, but come on now. A guy's got to name his own kid whatever he wants it if it's a son. Get that out there. Put that as a PSA. Let's go.
But I think, I agree, but maybe they're paying homage to another family member, and thus you get the second, right?
Like, or she's just telling me, deep down, she doesn't like my name. Yeah, like, what's up with that? You know what I mean? Come on. Like, that's just a subtle knock. Like, hey, what do you think of my name?
Right.
Well, it's nice, but I would never name my kid that. Like, what are you talking about? What is that? Come on now.
Yeah.
Stop it. Still digs at me.
I guess.
It's me in the feels.
Yeah, it really does. Did you hope that you're no, I'm not gonna ask it. Never mind. All right. Anyway, as we get ready for this Final Four weekend in the NCAA tournament, we focus on that men's tournament in our doubleheader of action tomorrow night in San Antonio. Give me 2 money line picks. Who's going to win both of our games tomorrow night inside the Alamo Dome? It was the question we asked all of you in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, who will win tomorrow's Final Four games? Auburn and Duke, Auburn and Houston, Florida and Duke, Florida and Houston. Of course, DRS. Duke is a 5.5-point favorite against the Cougs. Florida, a 2.5-point favorite against conference mate in Auburn. We have two teams expected to win, and that's really where the public is going, and in a pretty decisive margin. Nearly 65% of the public thinking both of our favorites win outright tomorrow night in the Final Four. Duke and Florida winning and matching up in a national championship game on Monday.
Yeah, we've seen blowouts in our Fade the Public polls before, but typically, Ben, it's like just on a question that's like a yes or no or just two answers to be given. This wasn't even like a reply to an other. This
Yeah.
was four distinctive answers given for the Final Four and an absolute smoke show by Florida and Duke, which I voted for, which I do think are the two better teams and will win that. But usually you'll get some of that, pushback from the public. Now, I don't think so. Like Auburn and Duke, only 17.9%, and then roughly 8% each for Auburn and Houston and Florida and Houston. So a runaway victory for Florida and Duke, which I agree with, but I'm surprised the public is running that heavy here at about 65% in a four-way poll. That's impressive for Florida and Duke.
Yeah, it really is, DRS. And on one sense, when we talk about this being from a Fade the Public perspective, and things are so publicly chalky, do we then want to do exactly that in Fade It? Do we want to pick one of the two underdogs to win outright, or maybe both? In fact, when you look at the Fade the Public poll, for both of the underdogs to win outright, Auburn and Houston 8.4%, Florida and Houston 8.9%. So it really does seem as though, DRS, people, and I guess it makes sense, with Duke a minus money favorite to win the national title, not trusting the Cougs, even if it is a competitive game, to knock off the Blue Devils outright. Houston has not been an underdog since the end of January when they went into Lawrence, taking on Kansas, winning a double overtime thriller. Houston trailed by as many as 6 points with 20 seconds remaining in regulation. They forced OT. They were down by 6 with about 18 seconds remaining in overtime, and they forced a second OT to win inside the fog. That was the only game this year for the Cougs as an underdog. They won outright in a double overtime thriller against Kansas. Donnie, again, I think it's natural to say here, with so much public love for both of the favorites, and the favorites getting that love, you want to fade the public. But this has been a tournament defined by its chalk. Not only all 4 1 seeds into the NCAA tournament Final Four, but of course a lot of favorites winning in this big dance. This has been a tournament that has defined the chaos and the madness we often love the month of March for. So I do want to knock the public for just being chalky and saying both of the favorites are playing for a national championship on Monday. If there was any year, though, for it to make sense, this would be that one.
No, it would be. But also understand this, too. When you look at the poll, 65%, it's like, yeah, well, it's the two favorites. We're not talking about 16.5 and 15.5 point spreads here. We're talking about 4.5 to 5.5 and 2.5 on the opposite side. So once again, the public saying, I like the favorites who technically within a possession or two of each other. It's not as if this is a runaway easy victory to pick in this poll at this point. That's why it's so impressive that the public is really feeling Florida and Duke as the two best teams, even though, let's just say 5 points or less in both of these games. Those are crazy close games on a neutral court after both of these teams have a week off to prepare. That's the fun part about it. So we'll see if the public, and a lot of people just like to fade the public, this is giving you great evidence that, hey, maybe at least one or both of these dogs can win. And if at least one wins on the money line, well, then there you go. You're already profitable for this weekend at the Final Four. We'll see if the public is right, which I, again, rode with the public with Florida and Duke.
Yeah, listen, I think that's the matchup as well. It's been my national championship pick really for the entirety of this NCAA tournament. We'll see how it plays out. We get you ready for Final Four weekend in the men's and women's NCAA tournament to end out our 3 hours together on this Friday on the early line on Sports Grid. To do just that, it's our coach, James Young, JY, joining us here on this Friday morning. We will go game by game in the Final Four on a Saturday night in San Antonio, and then we'll take a look to end out these 3 hours and this week on TEL at the Women's Big Dance and a Final Four on this Friday night in Tampa, Florida. JY, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here in this big spot ahead of a huge weekend in college hoops.
What better way to end up the college basketball season with my two good friends talking college hoops?
JY will be live tomorrow night for the nightcap between Duke and Houston, starting around 9 p.m. Eastern Time, along with Kevin Walsh on Sports Grid's Bracket Central. DRS and myself will pass the baton to JY and K-Dubs for that second game. We will be live starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time as Sports Grid's Bracket Central coverage begins on Final Four Saturday night. JY, let's begin with the opening game of 2 tomorrow night in the Alamo Dome. Florida, a 2.5 point favorite against SEC foe in the Auburn Tigers. Despite being the number 1 overall seed in the Big Dance, the Tigers an underdog. 2.5-point spread in favor of the Gators. The over-under stands at 159.5. As you peer through your scouting report, getting ready for this game, to you, what's the biggest matchup that will dictate the outcome?
It's really, it's how much can Johni Broome carry Auburn. You watch it, and obviously, Donnie being on with K-Dub during the Elite Eight after you and I, Ben, got off the air. You saw Johni Broome when he came out of the game first half, and obviously, when he got injured, you saw a completely different team in Auburn. So to me, the play of Johni Broome is going to be the X factor here in this matchup. How much can he carry an Auburn team to a possible win and an upset, even though they're the overall number 1 seed? Why are they an underdog? Simply put, 90-81 win by Florida earlier during the year. I do believe at Auburn, a Florida team that's played, in my opinion, much better basketball over the last 2 months of the year, and an Auburn team that is more, I would say, offensively diverse in the ways that they can attack you. Now, both teams are outstanding. Obviously, Ben, both top 10 in adjusted efficiency offensively and defensively. They can beat you in different styles, but the first team All-American, Johni Broome, is really going to decide what happens. How much does he score and lead this team? Right. And on the flip side, how much does Todd Golden take him away from Auburn?
We'll take a look at player props, Coach, here in just a moment. But if we are lining up this Florida-Auburn game, that opening number at the FanDuel Sportsbook here in New Jersey, 161.5, now down to 159.5. Again, playing in a football stadium dome, first game of the Final Four. How are we approaching the tempo in this game? And also, does that equate to an over or an under in your mind?
Well, if you look at both teams, Florida a little bit fast offensive possession length, about 43. I think Auburn was about 140, right? Middle of the road defensively. You're right. First game. Now, the only difference you're going to have here, DRS, is you're going to probably, I think most of these teams probably got to San Antonio, I would say, by Tuesday, right? So that would mean Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They probably have 3 days of practice. They should be adjusted to the sight line, so it shouldn't be as bad as before. Remember, 90-81 game, 171 points, first time out. I think both teams are going to want to try and score. Both teams can shoot the ball, have depth. Obviously, neither team really turns the ball over as much, so the shots should get up to the rim. Let it keep coming down with that full game. I actually think this game is going to be the one that goes over.
159.5, that total at this moment. JY, let's talk about those players, of course, on the most significant of stages on a Final Four Saturday in San Antonio. Let's start with Johni Broome, who has a points prop of 19.5 for Auburn. He had 25 and 14 in the Elite Eight win, that South Regional Final against Michigan State on Sunday, despite exiting the game for about 5 minutes of game time with a right elbow injury. Johni Broome asked about his status, getting ready for the Final Four, saying he feels good, should be very close to 100%, no restrictions for the matchup. DRS a little bit more skeptical. How healthy, how effective do you think Johni Broome is going to be? Do you have any reservations about his performance entering the Final Four?
Listen, everybody's banged up this time. It's just a matter of, do you get banged up and hurt where everybody to see it or not? And let's be honest, Ben, when you get to this point of the season, I've been there, well, not to the Final Four, nowhere close, but getting up to tournament time, you do have guys that sit out and practice and just walk through the stuff that they need to walk through. So interesting prop with Johni Broome at, obviously 19.5, only 18 in the first matchup versus Florida, but got 19 shots up. I think if this game is going to be close, Ben, he's got to clear 20. If he gets 15, 16 points, I don't see how Auburn is even in this game, to be honest with you. So for that, and thinking that the game is close, even though I like Florida, I'm going to go over to 19.5 for Johni Broome. I think he'll be able to carry enough of them to keep this to be a good matchup.
Let's say we take Johni Broome out of the equation here. Let's just say Florida's really locking him down, and maybe that elbow isn't right. If I gave you one player on the Auburn Tigers that you're going to tell the public to look forward to, maybe a betting prop or so, who's the guy that steps it up for the Auburn Tigers?
Well, you got to look at someone like Pettiford. You got to look at someone from the guard spot, because what's going to probably happen is if you go and you kind of take a look at what you may do, you may try and take away some other players, right? So you look at Pettiford, its points prop, looking at about 14.5. come off the bench, dynamo, big-time shooter, guard, not afraid to take the moment. So to me, that's someone you could look at. Listen, he shoots the ball about 38% from three. So if you want to look at probably Pettiford in regards to maybe three-point props, double team, kick out, he's going to get the looks. Maybe that's where you look. That's where I look for a guard, someone who can knock down shots from the perimeter.
Let's go to the other side for the Florida Gators. Highest points prop in the game, JY, of course, is the magnificent Walter Clayton Jr. at 20.5. If the Gators are going to play in the national championship game on Monday, what does Todd Golden's team need from a point production level out of Walter Clayton Jr.?
He's going to need somewhere in that number, and I think this number is going to be really close. I think the way to look at Walter Clayton Jr. is probably the assist, because I think Florida has been a little bit more offensive balance. You look at that 90-81 game they had earlier in the year, 19 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, kind of that junkyard dog. So if you either want to go assists or assists plus rebounds, that's where I would look. The guy I'm looking at, and I did it with you, and I always say his name wrong, Thomas Hout, the center, okay? This guy may play bigger minutes because of the fact that Condon has been hurt. Obviously, we talked about that, Ben, when he got hurt two Thursday nights ago in the Sweet 16. This is a guy that's shooting the ball from three well, 35% from three, has a three-pointer in 7 out of his last 10 games, 1 of 4 versus Auburn earlier in the year. Thomas Hout, 1 made 3, minus 154. Maybe parlay that with a Florida money line, and you get yourself the plus money.
It makes some sense in that, because I do like that as well. You give that guy the open shot, he's going to take it. You just need one look at that, and if it goes down, you're winning better in that equation. If we are taking a look at that early game that these two played, obviously on the road, Florida picked up a big victory, but now you take a look at this game playing on a neutral site. Are there any advantages for either one of these teams or the style of play, Coach? Because, again, I can't get enough where you go from the NBA, NCAA arenas into these larger football stadiums. That first half, are you going to panic anywhere? What do you want to see early from each one of these two teams?
I mean, if you want to wait and see if it gets off to a slow start to kind of figure it out, that's probably it. The good thing about both of these teams is both teams are top 50% in offensive rebounding percentage. So to me, watch the board game early on, right? Do either team's bigs get into foul trouble, and who dominates the offensive glass? Because I think that's what it becomes key, Donnie, in games of big arenas. Who secures that offensive rebound for a second or third opportunity to get a score?
Yep. A lot of similarities between these two teams. Conference foes, only one regular season matchup. As both JY and DRS said, Florida going to Auburn and winning outright as a double-digit dog. Also, Todd Golden's second ever coaching gig under Bruce Pearl at Auburn. They know each other very, very well. The nightcap on Saturday, Duke and Houston next. Our nightcap on Final Four Saturday in San Antonio. Duke and Houston. JY, our coach James Young, back with us for a second consecutive segment for the remainder of the early line here on this Friday. And JY, we broke down the first game between Auburn and Florida, the all-SEC showdown in the opening game of 2 in San Antonio. The nightcap is as good as you could hope for. Duke, a 5.5-point favorite against Houston. Total slightly on its way up to 136.5, but still a rather minimal number for a college basketball contest. I asked you what is the biggest matchup that will determine the outcome between Auburn and Florida. A similar question here between the Cougs and the Blue Devils. Who do you give the edge in this game as they face off tomorrow night in San Antonio?
A lot of this, Ben, is going to be predicated on the officials. And I want people to understand this. Houston is not going to win this game. If they're going to win it, but they're not going to win it pretty, right? It's not going to be a style contest for Houston. They have to be able to use their girth, their age, their maturity, and their physicalness versus a team like Duke. Duke has not seen a team like this all year. But in the flip side, neither has Houston. So it's going to come down, honestly, Ben, to the referees and how this game is officiated. We did the game, obviously, on Sunday, and we saw how, against Tennessee, when you let Houston play physical and play their style, they're going to lock you up. But if you start calling fouls on them, you're going to get them in foul trouble. So I think the main thing to watch is the officiating crew, how the game is called. It should be consistent throughout. I always used to tell my players, first 4 or 5 minutes, you got to figure out how this game is called. the more physical this game is called, the more it benefits Houston. The less they allow it, it benefits Duke. And also, Ben, I think that impacts the over-under in the game as well.
How about the impact on the over-under, Coach, when we just take a look at Houston actually has played 2 games in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 in a football stadium at Lucas Oil in Indianapolis. Now you travel down to San Antonio, another football stadium. Is that an advantage for Houston that we should play into, or just more of the eye candy, like don't worry about that?
Well, I think it comes down to the ability to rebound. Now, I think that's the key here with the physicality. If Francis, if Roberts, if Tugler, if these guys can stay out of foul trouble, that's going to be important for Houston because I think they're going to put pressure on Maluach and obviously Cooper Flagg and some of the others with them, with Duke. So to me, there's where a key component is. And if you want to talk about like one-on-one matchup, it's Flagg versus Roberts. That is the matchup. That is the matchup. I don't care what anybody says. That's the matchup that matters. Because if Juwan Robertson stay out of foul trouble and make it physical with Cooper, that's going to be different. Now, if I'm Calvin Sampson, I'm running a second guy. I'm trying to take away sight lines. If I'm Cooper Flagg, I'm trying to go to the cup and use my athleticism. But that is the matchup right there, right at the 4 spot. Can Juwan Roberts do enough to make it difficult for Cooper Flagg? If he does, the better he does, the better chance Houston wins. And that long goes with that under as well.
So let's talk about the prop profile then, of course, for Cooper Flagg, the biggest star in college basketball, the presumed #1 overall pick this summer in the 2025 NBA draft, the favorite to win the most outstanding player at this weekend's Final Four as well. 18.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. JY, in those numbers and in the performance you anticipate out of Cooper Flagg, the freshman on this huge stage in the Final Four, where do you think Flagg is able to excel?
It's going to be in the rebounds and the assists because I don't know if they're going to let this. They're not going to let this kid go off. Like I just don't see that happening because if you think about if I think the game's going under, Ben, and it's 136.5, say I think it's 130. Let's say Duke wins and they get 65 points. I'm depending on almost a third of the scoring to come from one guy. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if I'm Calvin Sampson, I'm making him distribute and make other guys beat me, particularly at the 3-point line, and use where my guards are effective, where Cryer, Sharp, Uzan defensively in regards to that matter. So to me, I'm looking under for the points prop with Flagg, looking more to the rebound and assists go over, make someone else beat me.
Yeah, if we take Flagg out of the equation, let's just say the next guy's to step up. Because, Coach, I'm with you. Like, we have enough data on both of these ball clubs to understand the way they want to play. Both really good on offense. Both can knock down the 3-point shot and play great defense. But the one thing I always find interesting is Houston will defend the 3-point shot, but they'll let you shoot the 3-point shot. When you take a look at Con Knippel from the 3-point line and also Tyrese Proctor, is there a secondary option on the Duke Blue Devils that you would lean towards going with if you're looking, let's just say, at threes made or points, opposed to just going with Cooper Flagg?
And I think that's where the key thing is. I think the 3-point line is going to be where you're going to make their mark. And I think that's where you have to look at, obviously, threes made. Now, if you try and look at the market right now, Knippel is plus 182 for 3+ made threes. And obviously, Proctor's at plus 130. I think Proctor's going to get a little bit more attempts. I wonder if Knippel could struggle with the physicality in regards to how they're being guarded, even though Knippel has gotten so much better off the bounce. I think they run him off the 3-point line of anything because he's Duke's best shooter. I like Proctor at plus 130 if you go one way. And on the flip side, Emmanuel Sharp. Ben and I watched that game. If there's a big shot guy that's not going to be afraid the moment, and it doesn't matter if he's making or missing, it's Emmanuel Sharp. So if you want to look at 3-point props, right now on FanDuel, they have it as 2+, 3+. They don't have it at over-under. I would look at Emmanuel Sharp, 3+ made threes at plus 120. I'll look at Tyrese Proctor, 3+ made threes at plus 130 if I go with the 3-point props.
A lot of guys for Houston, JY, that can fill it up. A lot of guys for the Cougs that were there for the Sweet 16 loss to these Blue Devils exactly a tournament ago. Is it Emmanuel Sharp from deep? Is it LJ Cryer doing everything? Is it Milos Uzan providing that spark as well? Offensively, who has the best night for Houston in the Final Four?
To me, it's Emmanuel Sharp because I think his ability to knock down shots. UConn will be comfortable distributing, and if I'm Duke, I'm loading up on Cryer when he especially goes off the bounce. It's Emmanuel Sharp. He is the difference maker, and that's why I think they cover the spread, and I think they actually steal the game.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be Houston outright. JY, say goodbye to Donnie right side. We got to let him go to the money line. We'll all see each other tomorrow in studio. DRS. Is that lefty? A Final Four Saturday in San Antonio. That's tomorrow in the men's NCAA tournament. Tonight, it is Final Four Friday in Tampa in the women's big dance. And our coach, James Young, JY, still here for this final segment on a Friday and this week on the early line to get you set for our two matchups tonight. JY, much like in the men's big dance, the first matchup of the Final Four in the women's NCAA tourney, an all-SEC affair. South Carolina, the reigning champs, hoping for their third national championship in the last 4 years, take on a Texas team that did the unthinkable earlier in the regular season. In Austin, Madison Booker and the Longhorns beat South Carolina outright as a slight home underdog, snapping South Carolina's 57-game win streak in SEC play. The Gamecocks did get their revenge, winning the SEC tournament title game against Texas as well. Now they face off with a spot in a national championship game on the line. 4.5-point spread in favor of South Carolina. A total at 124.5. How do you break down the matchup between the Longhorns and the Gamecocks?
You know, this is obviously round 3 between these two. And Ben, when you really think about it, since that loss to UConn, where, you know, they lost their home winning streak, South Carolina has been absolutely bludgeoning teams. And that includes a 64-45 win over Texas in the SEC final. And they've been drilling teams even in the tournament, although that game got a little quirky at times with Indiana and with Maryland, and of course with Duke. I think this familiarity, I look at this team in South Carolina, I think they're bigger, I think they're deeper, and they've been there before, although Vic Schaefer is one hell of a coach that's been around for a long time. Because of those advantages, I'm willing to lay the 4.5 versus South Carolina. I think they're the better team and should set up for a monumental, probably championship matchup where they look to exact revenge.
JY, when you think about South Carolina, they have struggled so far in the big dance. They have not covered in any of their last 3 wins in terms of the pregame spread. And in the second weekend, they were trailing against Maryland late in the fourth quarter. It was a tied game with about 2.5 minutes remaining against the Duke Blue Devils in the Elite Eight. A really interesting matchup tonight between familiar foes. 4th game this year between the Longhorns and the Gamecocks. Our nightcap in Tampa, it is UCLA, the number 1 overall seed, and yet a 7.5-point underdog against Gino Auriemma, Paige Beckers, and UConn. The Huskies, a minus money favorite to win the national championship, and a 7.5-point favorite in the Final Four. Will this game, JY, be more competitive than the odds makers expect, or will Connecticut, who has won 14 consecutive games by at least 14 points, continue to steamroll the opposition?
And really quick, before we get to that, Malaysia Fawali over 12.5 points. Remember, folks, she gets 20-plus minutes. She's 14-4 to go over that number. Should be able to get there 2 of 10 in the SEC final, when she did not get that versus Texas. Now, onto this game. They've looked really good. Now, the problem with UConn is sometimes they start slow. So I would not blame you if you waited this out. I did this when we were with Ben and I did it together last weekend. They were, I think, down 3. I took a minus 7.5. They beat Oklahoma by like 30. So I wouldn't mind you waiting this out a little bit, but I will lay the 7.5 points. And here's the thing. Naismith coach here, Corey Close, although I disagree that she got it. I'm going to look at how she's going to defend. And how I would defend her, I ain't letting Paige go off. So where I would look, Paige Beckers over 4.5 assists, over 7 of her last 12 games, and that's the way I do it. Remember, 2 games she missed by the hook. You got to make other people beat you. The problem is with Chen, with Fudd, with Strong, they have enough other players to do it as well. UConn minus a point, Paige over 4.5 assists.
Paige Beckers, 34 points in the round of 32 win against South Dakota State. 40 in the Sweet 16 against Oklahoma. 31 on Monday night against USC. JY, when all is said and done, at the end of this weekend in the women's NCAA tournament on Sunday evening, who goes home a national champion?
I've said it, Ben. You notice for the better part of 2 months, I think UConn is the best team. Paige is playing her best basketball since their freshman year. I keep feeling in some crazy mind that this is Gino's swan song. And what better way to send out the greatest coach in women's basketball history? Although my old friend Kamiko Williams played for Pat Summitt would disagree with that. I would say this: they win it. Gino hangs it up after the season.
Oh, now that would be something. And if you have that breaking news to report, you better stink and do it. JY, I'll see you tomorrow night as we get ready for Sports Grid's Bracket Central coverage. Although we will not be working together, of course, we'll cross paths in studio.
Right up.
The early line back on Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend.